was a box underneath there was a built-in cot that was his bed, and underneath it, it pulled out a box. It was a live bomb. It was packaged and ready to go.
Wow.
And the batteries were live on it. X-ray, I could see the inside of it.
And he had the live bomb under the cot that he slept on.
Under his bed.
After a 40-day manhunt, the FBI finally had Ted Kaczynski. Here's what happened next.
You've got him cuffed and stuffed there and under control. You've got your search warrant. You go in, talk about where that goes from the search warrant to then the decision to effect an arrest.
Well, yeah. And by the time they put handcuffs on Ted and take him up to that cabin, try to interview him, Turchie and I, by this time, Terry had joined us from having met with the judge to get the search warrant signed. So Terry and I entered the cabin because Max had already told us that Ted's not talking. He wants to talk about everything under the sun except any of the Unabomber activity. And so Terry and I said, well, maybe we'll go in and it'll break the ice and we can, get him started talking. So we go in there, and by this time Ted had told them how to start a fire, actually, and they had a fire going in the cabin because it was still cold. We go in there and we introduce ourselves, and he care less that I was the special agent in charge. He says, Terry Turchie, is that the same name that's on the affidavit of the search warrant that these guys handed to me, which is like a 2 or 3 page summary or statement with the judge's signature on it and everything, and had Terry Turchie's name on the front page. So he was that observant to make the connection that now it's Terry Turchie that was in the cabin. So he wanted to ask him, can I see the affidavit? I want to read the affidavit. And Terry explained to him, well, that's not going to happen, but
and for people that don't know that are listening to the podcast, I mean, the affidavit really lays out all the probable cause and all the information, and so that's completely different than what's on the search warrant.
Right. And the affidavit is inches thick. I mean, it's probably 6 or 8 inches thick with paper by this time. All of those.
And I assume you're not required to show him the affidavit. I mean, it's not something that he had a right to see at that moment, was it?
He does not.
Yeah, okay.
He could see it at some point, but not.
Yeah. What was in the cabin? I'm interested. What did you find in there?
Well, the interesting thing about that, remember, there's no power. We didn't have time to get generators up there. They were coming the next day. We had to not enter the cabin until the following day. So here we are with a suspect in handcuffs, but yet not officially arrested. There's no telephones down there. There's no radio contact back to FBI offices, and we're like 90 miles from Helena, and it's getting dark, And so I just said, well, we're going to take him in and book him at the jail, at the U.S. Marshals in Helena. And so we had a discussion about it, and I said, okay, I authorize you to make the arrest because we did have two agents that were off. Their part-time job was to be bomb technicians to help search in the cabins and stuff. And so they knew enough about what to look for. They had been to some of the bomb sites before. They knew what kind of chemicals that Ted used and what some of the triggers and whatnot. And they were actually sitting on a makeshift bookshelf that you could see from the front door. Because this was a cabin that was almost like a walk-in closet. I mean, it was that small. Yeah. And you could, from the door and flashlight shining in there, you could actually see things. And so we're getting evidence on what's in the cabin without actually going inside the door. And so it's based on their they're telling me that this is what they've seen and that these are bomb-making materials and there's things that match components that they've seen before. And I said, okay, but we're going to arrest them and take them in.
And then clearly you had agents that once you left and took him in that secured the scene until you could effect the search warrant.
Right. And by the time, but we couldn't communicate any of this to Washington, D.C., and they were absolutely freaking out.
Oh my God. I can only imagine.
This guy's doing
I can only imagine some of the frustration and the bureaucracy that you
But
might
can you
have to deal
imagine?
with. No.
Can you imagine that the department? Some people in the department are talking about releasing him on a what do you call it? A temporary release.
Own recognizance or something.
Yeah, it's
right?
an own recognizance. Like he would report back to the courthouse
Yeah.
next morning.
Like, I mean,
Chance of
who
that.
are these people? With what kind of common sense are we talking about here? You know,
We were lucky.
During this-
There was an assistant U.S. attorney that representing, I guess, the entire state of Montana. That was a former FBI agent. Can you believe that? Our attorney was a former FBI agent. The director of the FBI was a former FBI agent before he became
a former attorney, U.S. attorney. Yeah.
before he was a U.S. attorney. He was a district court judge, and then he became the director of the FBI. So
Right.
it was easy to talk to him because he knew everything. I mean, this case, and Janet Reno was a former district attorney in Miami. I mean, so
Right.
the people we needed to talk to they had street cred themselves.
I'm
Jim
sure
was,
that helped, yeah.
During this period of time, you and Terry and others were with Kaczynski. Did he ever say anything to link him to the Unabomber case himself? You said he talked about everything but the Unabomber case. What was he
Yeah.
talking about, and did he ever talk about it and admit that he was the Unabomber?
I mean, Max was with him for several hours, and they talked about everything from his gardening recipes he would cook of venison and possum and everything else that he would cook. He just never talked about any of the crimes he saw.
How'd you find him? Did you find him like as a very personable, articulate guy, or did you find him kind of wacky and unusual, or what?
The latter, wacky and unusual.
Yeah. How did he smell coming out of that freaking cabin? Like,
Whoa.
like was he just a typical sort of troll coming out of his little hole?
By the time I walked over, because we had the radio local network with the SWAT people, and I was walking up to the cabin after they had already got him and put him in handcuffs. We're walking him over to the that elk hunter's cabin. That was the sight to see, and the people, the SWAT team guys were coming down now, and they had those white ghillie suits on to be in the snow and everything, and so they looked really comical themselves. And then other agents were walking up. I'm walking there with a postal inspector that had been part of our inner team on this thing, and he said, Jim, until you and Max described what probable cause and evidence that you had this morning that we did at the group back at the 7th branch before we deployed. He said, I was convinced Ted Kaczynski was not the Unabomber.
Wow.
But he just didn't have all the information that was in that affidavit. You just didn't have time to brief everybody. Plus, we were protecting against a leak, any more leaks, as one had already occurred.
Right.
Never decided or dissolved where that leak came from.
Wow.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Jim, I'm curious your opinion. Without that manifesto, would you have captured the Unabomber, or were you even close to figuring out it was Ted Kaczynski before that manifesto got in your hands?
Yes, we would have, through that computerization of data project that Terry Turchie had implemented, because by going in there, I don't know if we could do it today with privacy laws, but we were gathering huge amounts of public data, like from universities that had been targeted. And in Chicago, there were several bombs there in the very early years. And we would get all that. We were able to look in there and see, make a run about what students were at these universities in Chicago area that also was at the University of Utah, which was there was an attempted bomb there, or was it University of California in Berkeley? So we could just run data searches and find out who was there. And we also had like car records and property records from around for certain mile radius around these areas. We're just grabbing information because we could search against it and see who, physically who was moving between Chicago, Salt Lake City, Sacramento, and San Francisco, because that's where all the Unabomber activity was. Where we see him mailing letters, mailing bombs, and actually bombs going off. So it wasn't where the bombs exploded so much. It's where was he actually sending the bombs on their way, and then he started placing some of the bombs
Right.
because the mail bombs were too weak to kill anybody.
Right.
So we've jumped around a little bit. I just want to go back and finalize this. I mean, we were kind of joking about, he might be released on his own recognizance and whatnot because you're waiting now to do the search warrant the next day. So you do the search warrant. Talk a little bit about the interior of the cabin and all that, and then actually making the arrest. I mean, he was physically arrested and arraigned. Like, how quickly was the time frame after the search warrant?
Well, the search warrant, he was detained, as I mentioned, and put in handcuffs. And
Right.
by the way, somebody asked me before about was he dirty and all like that. When I got up to the cabin, Max was looking for rags or something he could wipe the stuff, the grime off of his hands, because Ted was just covered in soot.
Oh God.
Mhm.
He finally got like a branch off of a fir tree, and he was like pulling on that to get the stuff off of his hands.
Oh, nasty.
And then, and poor Max, he had to spend hours with them, and in the car driving 90 miles, and Ted's in the back, he's in the back seat with Ted. Like,
And he's driving, hanging his head out the window, trying to get some fresh air.
it was
But
like,
yeah,
Oh, my goodness.
let's talk about the cabin itself, inside the
Okay.
cabin. And
so the
all
cabin,
that.
we could look in, but we couldn't go in. So
Right.
the
You got your search warrant finally, and you did go
right,
in.
yeah, and so and we got the next day or overnight. Then the generators came, and so we could illuminate the inside of the cabin because there were just two tiny little windows in that cabin. Even though it was small, it was still dark in there. You needed illumination, particularly if you're afraid that there's going to be a booby trapped bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought up a portable X-ray machine. So once you go inside, and of course everything was photographed that you could see visually, but then there was boxes everywhere. It was like a pack rat. Had lived there for well over 10, 15 years, and there were just boxes on boxes and boxes. And then there was a little sort of a rungs on the side of the wall and up in a trapdoor above, and a little attic, and it was just stuff full of stuff. In the attic, they actually found the typewriter that he used to type the manifesto. Found a copy of the manifesto.
Interesting.
In those days, you had you used to make copies. You had
Ditto paper.
yeah, and you could make you could type and make 4 copies by just
Right.
typing.
Yeah. You just type one time and it went through to 4 copies. Yeah.
Right. And so the extra copies and all were littered around, and they found the amount of evidence they found in the cabin was just, it was a ironclad evidence that the prosecutors needed. And that's why he ultimately pled guilty on all counts to murder.
Yeah.
Because there was just no way out of it. There was in there, they x-rayed every box, as I mentioned. There was a box underneath there was a built-in cot. That was his bed, and underneath it, they pulled out a box. It was a live bomb. It was packaged and ready to go,
Wow.
and the batteries were live on it. X-ray, you could see the inside of it.
And he had the live bomb under the cot that he
Live
slept
bomb
on.
under his bed.
Wow.
And
I don't
all
know
it
if I
needed,
wanted.
it had a return address on it, which was actually the address of the FBI office in Seattle. This was a cute thing. He started doing that so that if it didn't get delivered, it would get delivered to the FBI office. Somebody there would open it. It would blow up.
Be the return to sender, right? So
Well, Jim, I remember reading or maybe hearing you talk about this, that he had kept these journals and the journals were inside the cabin when you did the search.
Right.
And in those journals, he actually confessed to his motivation. He hated the world, everything that wasn't Ted Kaczynski in his world, he hated. So that's why he mailed bombs to universities and to airlines and to computer stores. And he more or less confessed. And I mean, you had that all that evidence. Am I remembering that correctly?
Very quickly, yeah. There was entries I can recall that were in his journal that was it was like, well, I came back to Chicago on that particular day, uh, and for no other reason other than to kill a communist. That was the quote. And then other times he would say, well, I wanted to blow up the airplane. He didn't use the word blow up, but I didn't want to put the device on the airplane for any other reason than to perhaps kill a businessman. It was like total tunnel vision that there were families, small kids, there were women, children, other unrelated people, but he wanted to kill businessmen that would be going back to, and politicians going back to Washington. That was his motivation. And it really gets me upset now in the years since seeing people trivialize what he did from a criminal standpoint to say that he had this greater good of warning society, and you read that manifesto, and it's a hard read, but you don't find that he's offering any solutions whatsoever. He's just, and he's paraphrasing other people that have written documents about it over the years. I mean, I didn't see anything uh, really earth-shaking. But when you hear people talking about it or read about it, they'll say, "Oh, he was a visionary."
Isn't the manifesto still used by certain fringe groups today? Some of the ideas in the manifesto?
Oh yeah.
It's
Sure.
still active. It's still out there. Yeah.
But the thing about when I read the there's other stuff, the journals that came out of and the letters that he had written to his brother and all, he wasn't making those same arguments. He would allude to it offhand, but it wasn't like a driving force for him.
Right.
His driving force was anger, and he even talked and alluded to the fact that he probably blew up an airplane not just to kill politicians or to kill people, businessmen and all, but because he complained about the pilots flying low over his cabin and being noisy and polluting the sky with their contrails.
Wow. So
Yeah,
you're convinced he would have continued. I mean, out in your mind, he had not he been captured, would have continued.
Yeah, and
Well, and clearly he had the other bomb under his cot there. So I guess
Maybe that was meant to blow himself up.
yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know that I'd be wanting to sleep somewhere
was
with
a
a
lot of-
bomb under my bed.
yeah. There's a lot of people. He took that 6-year sabbatical after an eyewitness spotted him in Salt Lake City. So from 87 to 93. And that's when he was doing research and development on his bombs. And he made a really good bomb after that. He was a lousy bomb maker before. He could convert a barometer into an altimeter and it worked. But then the trigger from the spark of electricity from the battery getting to the trigger to explode the thing was like it was built by somebody different that didn't know what they were doing. I mean, he used match heads for his igniter, like kitchen match heads, and he scraped the black powder out of rifle cartridges for his explosion. And what he got was when he wrapped it improperly. Anybody that know that an explosion, you have to enclose the explosion to get the to get the pop. It has, but he put like rubber bands around it or something. It's like he had no concept of how to really build an explosive device at the beginning, and he kept getting better and better. It took him 15, 16 years to build a really good mail bomb that was scary as heck. And he took advantage of a postal regulation where you could mail a package of a certain dimension without going into a post office. You could put it in a drop box. And that's what he did with those bombs at Sacramento that went and, he was doing a demonstration in advance. Nobody knew about manifesto, but he knew that he was going to have to get people, he was going to have to kill somebody to really get people to pay attention to him, and would publish his manifesto. And he finally built bombs that would do that, bombs that would blow up planes. It was very scary from 1993 until 96. There was a lot of concern about what this man might do.
Did he actually
Jim,
get a
I'm
bomb on a
concerned.
plane? Did he get a bomb on a plane?
He put a bomb, yeah, in 1979, like his third bomb, right out of the
That one did
Yeah.
not.
gate was the one that had the altimeter, and it had the match heads, and it had the black powder. It created a fire in the hold that in itself, except for a successful emergency landing, would have brought the plane down eventually.
Wow. But that was
Jim,
when he wasn't as good at bomb making as he became later in life.
He
Could have done a lot more
in that
damage.
in that 6 years that he had time on his hands, he built a really good bomb.
Right.
Jim,
So
it took
he got-
7.
He made it smaller and more powerful at the same time.
Right.
I mean, that's like turning
Wow.
lead into gold, right?
I'm interested in your opinion on this, Jim. It took 17 years to capture the Unabomber. You came on the last 2 years and were very successful in changing the way the investigation was being handled. You created these teams. Every agent working the case teamed up with an ATF agent, a postal inspector. I thought that was ingenious, and it really helped to build morale. So a lot of good things happened in those last couple years. But my question is, today, with a lot more technology and forensic science having advanced the way it has, do you think it would have taken a lot less time to capture the Unabomber if we had those tools in place back then?
It would be days or maybe even just hours to
Wow.
solve today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Particularly if he didn't hide his trail better than he did. You know, if all the other facts were true, because for him to use his true name, in hotels and stuff was a big help, obviously for us, right?
Yeah.
So he left a trail that was identifiable for us.
AI, I'm sure, could have speeded things up quite a bit in terms of pulling
even
all
without-
those data points
even
together,
without
right?
AI, and if we just had decent word processing, at that time, and we would have had to go through and literally take notes that were on everything from index cards, to this piece of paper that would be original notes that agents had taken at a particular time that evidence was collected from a bomb scene and all. And it just, evidence was in every shape or form of paper document. And once you got around that, it just changes everything.
For
He
sure.
went to prison for quite a while. You captured him, I think, in what, 1996, and he died in prison in 2023. He had a cancer diagnosis, but I read where he died actually by suicide. He hung himself. I'm just curious, during his days in prison, did you ever follow him? Did you ever hear stories about him? Did he ever confess to the crimes? Did he ever express remorse for the crimes that he committed?
Well, I'm told he never confessed, but I frankly didn't follow him. I'd had enough of Ted Kaczynski, and I really didn't pay much attention to it. I don't really frankly know how he died in prison. I joked about I didn't get my invitation to his funeral. Probably got lost in mail.
Yeah. One last question I had, and there was I think a $1 million reward for anybody that could tell you who the Unabomber was or bring him to justice. It was his brother, David, who actually provided that evidence. Did he receive the reward? I'm just curious, and if
He
so,
did. He
was it for
did.
pain or did he do something with it?
No, my understanding is he got it, and then he donated most of it to various charities or something. But and I think he had some expenses. He basically took out some expenses, but he did the right thing by that.
Well,
Right.
Well, we're closing up the interview now, and I'll turn it over to you, Dennis, in a second. But let me just say that, we call this podcast "Heroes Behind the Badge." And Jim, I've gotten to know you a little bit over the years. You were very kind to do a witness to history event at the National Law Enforcement Museum, and you were very helpful in trying to raise some money for building that museum from one of the companies you worked with. I am just so pleased and honored to have you on today because you are one of those unsung heroes behind the badge. Everybody knows the Unabomber case was eventually solved, and this man was brought to justice, so he couldn't kill anymore or maim people. And you were really the key guy that made that happen. And you created this amazing team. I know I met Terry Turchie. I met Max Noel. I know they were integral. You mentioned other FBI agents who helped, ATF, Postal Inspection Service. But you were the leader that finally solved this case. And I'm just so thankful that we had a chance to tell your story here today and talk a
Absolutely.
little bit about the behind the scenes of the Unabomber case. Thank you so much. And congratulations on an amazing career, sir.
And
Absolutely.
absolutely. And what we should talk about real quick before we wrap this up is we do want to give you an opportunity to talk about the FBI in general. You talked about and wrote about breaking the FBI's own rules and the frustration, maybe some of those things, and maybe from when you were with the FBI to now today's FBI and some of the politics and how it's changed and today we talk about the weaponization of the Justice Department and any of those things. Well, what are your feelings about that?
Well, I mean, I had a 32-year career as an FBI agent, and actually before that, I worked for the FBI while I was going to college in San Francisco State. Worked as a night clerk and went to college during the day, and it was the FBI was a great experience for me. My two older brothers had gone into the FBI, so I had a path to follow, particularly my oldest brother. He was 12 years older than I. And the middle brother didn't stay in. He went to a military career. But my oldest brother, 12 years older than I, and he became agent in charge in Louisville and Cleveland. I became agent in charge in Honolulu and San Francisco. So I always kind of lorded that over him in terms of I kind of had the palm tree experience.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. FBI was really good to me and our families, and um, I I don't even want to think about the FBI today. I retired in 1996. I was actually even before the trial was completed, and I was recruited by a financial services firm in San Francisco, Charles Schwab Corporation. I went there. I said I can do a 5-year retirement, and I stayed for 18 years.
Wow.
And Jim, when you say you don't even want to think about the FBI today, why is that?
Well, I don't know, and I don't know anything firsthand, but it just seems like it's a lot more divisive than it was when I was there. Which we enjoyed a kind of family relationship to an extent. I mean, it was divisive in those days about headquarters in the field, agents in the field, and I spent as little time as possible at headquarters. I was always I was always a bit of a rebel in that sense, and so it was, and that's where I got this thing with being against the bureaucracy of, and I really found uh, somebody that felt the same way in Louis Freeh, because later I read articles and that was even after the Unabomber case and all that. Apparently, he was trying to send and get rid of some of the bureaucracy at headquarters because it had gotten really, really bad, and we effectively in managing this case just cut them out. I mean, I'm not pulling any or bragging or anything, but I mean it was necessary. We had to make decisions and act on them within the hour. We couldn't wait a week or two to get an answer back and this sort of thing.
And isn't that true across the board with law enforcement everywhere? You just want to do your job. You want to lock up the bad guys. You want to keep the media, the politics, and the bureaucracy out of that. And it would be just so much more efficient. And Jim, great to talk with you. So interesting. And Dennis, take it away.
I will,
Dennis,
Jim.
Dennis, before we close, I hate to leave the interview without mentioning Jim's book.
Yeah, I was going to ask him to mention it, but there you go. See?
Max Noel, Terry Turchie, and Jim Freeman co-wrote this book, and it's called Unabomber: How the FBI Broke Its Own Rules to Capture the Terrorist Ted Kaczynski. And
Yes.
I just encourage people to read that book to get a lot more of the details surrounding what we've discussed here today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good
Yes.
book.
This podcast is called Heroes Behind the Badge, as Craig said, and heroes come in all shapes and sizes. Not every hero wears a uniform and a cape. And Jim Freeman, you are one of those, what I call those behind the scenes heroes. You risk your own career. You risk a lot by coming forward with the manifesto and getting the right people to decide. That could have gone sideways and blown up in your face, but you took that step because you believed that was the right step. You used creative ways to capture Kaczynski, ways that are, as you have said, you're the rebel, untraditional. And so we recognize you and salute you as one of the true heroes behind the badge. Without your leadership, I don't know what would have happened to this case. And I think the outcome could have been a lot worse. So we salute you. We thank you. We recognize you as a true hero behind the badge. Thanks for sharing your story. Some of the stuff, I guess a lot of people knew, and some of it today, I didn't know, and some of us didn't know. So thanks for sharing. Let me remind our listeners and our viewers, you have been watching an episode of Heroes Behind the Badge. Yes, Heroes Behind the Badge is brought to you by Citizens Behind the Badge. You can reach us at citizensbehindthebadge.org. And when you do, you'll find out all about the mission of Citizens Behind the Badge. We are the leading support of the men and women of law enforcement in the United States. You can join us by going on our website, citizensbehindthebadge.org, and selecting from the tabs. First of all, we'd love you to subscribe to this podcast. You can find the podcast tab on that website. Like us, follow us. You'll be the first to know. We have exciting episodes from the past that you can tune into that are receiving hundreds of thousands of views. I'm sure this podcast will do the same because we're talking to real heroes with real stories, real cops, and real situations. It's at citizensbehindthebadge.org to find out more how you can support the men and women of law enforcement. That's all for this episode of Heroes Behind the Badge. When you subscribe, you'll be notified instantly when we release new episodes. And if you liked anything Jim Freeman had to say today, there was a lot to like. Hit subscribe, hit like, and follow. We'd appreciate it. We'll see you next time on Heroes Behind the Badge.